depending on the socioeconomic conditions of learners, immigrant children often do better than native-born children in public school systems. The UK just came up with a report that showed that. That's true in Canada, and true in the US. So there's no reason to believe that children who are already bilingual or multilingual cannot benefit as much or more from these programs as children who already speak the dominant language. Does anybody else want to? There's not enough research on these children, I think. So if somebody's looking for a PhD, that's a good topic.
I'll send it.
Okay, hi. I'm aware I should do this in different languages, given. Entonces, ¿lo puedo hacer en castellano? O meglio, visto che siamo in Italia, lo faccio in italiano, poi lo faccio in inglese. Okay, I'll do it in English shortly after. I'll try to be quick. Non lo so se avete visto ieri i giornali, ma l'altro ieri qui hanno passato un disegno di legge, no, per la riforma dell'istruzione qui in Italia. E lì dentro c'è un commentario sull'inglese nelle scuole. E il Ministero di Istruzione chiede che l'inglese sia parlato, no, deve essere parlato in maniera perfetta. Briefly, what's happening here? There's currently school reform going on, and it was passed through the courts, the ministries, day before yesterday. In the papers yesterday, one of the key things they reported was, yes, we must support English in schools, and it must be spoken perfectly. How do we respond to ministries of education?
Tell them to talk to Anthony about it.
Obviously, I'm looking for a job.
Renzi should be the good example, right, of perfect English.
No, I mean, I think that, I think it's very sad. I think it's very sad. And so I do think that lobbying is the way to go. I mean, I think that more information is needed in the scuola pubblica. I mean, people don't know and they don't understand, and that's something that has to change. So now I'm going to pass it to Antonella, because she's not
Yes, I mean, as I was saying, you know, many of these comments or indeed deliberations, you know, by the politicians are based on misconceptions. So we need to reach these people, you know, and make sure that they make decisions based on facts and possibly on research rather than misconceptions. So to give you another example, in Scotland, the politicians have decided to introduce languages in primary school. They are very keen on Chinese, because Chinese is the language of the future. And so, but they have this idea that you can teach Chinese to a 5-year-old exactly like you teach it to an adult. So no awareness that a 5-year-old may be learning in different ways, no awareness of what can be realistically expected out of 1 or 2 hours a week of Chinese for a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old. So these people need more information, and then teachers also need more information, and we're trying to make sure that that happens.
I hate politics, but I had to do it for many, many years in the US. This is what I would suggest. Find the people, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people, rich, powerful, who influence each politician, each person who is helping that politician or that minister make that decision or that group make that decision. Get to them, feed them, invite them to fancy hotels, invite them to your conference, give them a big deal on the stage, get them on your side, educate them, tell them all the things that we learned in the 2 days here and more. And if you have found the right people, then perhaps they can start influencing these decision makers. The other thing is, I don't know how the politics works here in Italy, but the other way to go around it is to find the people who are voting for these people, if it is a matter of being voted. I don't know the structure. But you have to get to them through the people who are influencing these ministers and politicians.
But we're not going to do any bunga bunga parties.
I would just add that one of the things that has been very influential in the spread of bilingual programs in lots of different communities is research, and especially local research. So researchers seldom change people's minds, especially if they're researchers from other countries. But if you have a new program, or if you have a system of bilingual programs, I really strongly urge you to undertake some program of research on these programs. And it might be done in collaboration with the universities, so that you can dispel these misconceptions in a very local way. And it would be very easy to dispel this particular notion, because we know that these students are going to acquire competence in English that far exceeds anything else that's going on in the present public school system. But I think giving them evidence might help to convince them, in addition to fine dining and everything else that Elsie suggested.
I'm wanting to ask a question about the, trilingual, let's say multilingualism, and learning disabilities, or learning difficulties, whichever the politically correct term is. And I have a student in my class who has a German father and a Brazilian mother, and his grade 2 brother has an identified learning difficulty. So they were advised by teachers in my school to drop one of the languages because it was simply too much. Which meant that his older sister and brother also lost out. What would be your opinions, feedback, suggestions for doing a situation like this?
Well, first they should read up the book that I did with Joanna Hardy. We wrote a book which was rewritten called Dual Language Development and Disorders. And it really dispels this myth that children who have a language impairment cannot become bilingual. And there's a growing body of research that is very, very compelling. That there's research on children now with Down syndrome, on children with autism spectrum disorder.
I think he was on the autism spectrum.
And what's interesting about this research, and what's important about this research, is that these are all children who have genetically determined or genetically based difficulties acquiring language. And that's well established, not necessarily so much with SLI, but certainly with Downs and with autism. And yet the research shows that children who are exposed to 2 languages despite these learning difficulties do just as well as similar children who are learning 1 language. So it speaks to the power of children's ability to acquire language, that even when the language learning system is not fully functional, at least in comparison to children without these impairments, it still doesn't stop them from learning 2 languages. I don't know of any research that's actually looked at trilingual children with these kinds of difficulties. But there is research that actually would dispel those kinds of decisions. But we talked about this earlier, that my personal view is, but I would be interested in hearing what other people say, that even though children might be able to learn 2 or 3 languages despite these difficulties, whether or not they should learn them really needs to take into account how important the languages are to them, and what kind of resources are available to give them additional support. If the languages are important for them because their family is bi or multilingual, then by all means, go ahead. But as somebody said, this kind of experience shouldn't be undertaken lightly just because it would be a nice thing if the child was bi or multilingual, because it requires an enormous amount of extra work on everybody's part. And you want to think about it carefully in those cases. But there's no evidence to say that at least in those cases these children cannot become bilingual within the limits of the language learning difficulties they have. It's remarkable, really.
Well, it's really affecting the older brother. He refuses to speak Portuguese.
There is research that shows that families that are bilingual and discouraged from using one of the languages because one of the children has a language learning difficulty, that these children actually do less well than children in families where you have a similar situation, but the families don't drop one of the languages, because a really important source of additional support for these children is the families, because they not only need support in the school, they need support from their families. If the parents are discouraged from using all of the linguistic resources in the family, then they become disengaged from the child in providing support, and the child become disengaged from them, and that actually works against the child acquiring full competence.
Can I, we are at the moment doing a project on ASD children, so children with autism and bilingualism. There, the general medical wisdom is, again, to recommend that 2 languages, never mind 3, might be too much. And this seems to, be based on the idea that, bilingualism is an effort, and these children are already struggling, with 1 language, and it may be even more delayed, because they have more than 1 language. Now, as Fred was saying, there's absolutely no evidence that that bilingualism actually makes the condition worse. In fact, there are a few studies that show that at least for certain kinds of ASD, the autism, bilingualism might partly offset some of the typical manifestations of these impairments. So in terms of empathy, for example, we need a lot more research on this, and this is what we're going to do. But at the moment, we try to make sure that health professionals have enough information about typical bilingual development, and at least they don't think that bilingualism implies, more effort, and so on for the brain. So again, they can give recommendations that are based on facts.
Aspect of it is sometimes it's unfortunate that decisions are made not to support the other language because of the limitation in having the professionals, so the speech pathologists or the professionals are not bilingual. And so therefore the recommendation sometimes is also related to the limitation of the availability of professionals that are bilingual, which is of course the last thing that we should, make a decision, support a decision on. So I just wanted to mention that sometimes that also is an aspect, is the limitation of the resources or the professionals.
Hello, I work in a school where the norm is to learn 3 languages. All students study 3 languages, one of which is their mother tongue. And we're non-selective, so we have a range of ability, and that question never arises. And over 80% of our students graduate with proficiency in 3 languages.
So I should just tell them to come to your school.
It's not research-based.
I think you do have to, if you're working with the parents, you have to, I don't know how other people feel about this, but they have to be prepared to fight some fights. Because once again, research is not usually the decisive factor, but often if parents insist and they have the research backing, they can succeed, but it takes a lot of effort on the part of parents.
That's what I'm asking now, because I'm going to go back and do exactly that.
Just to add one little comment that I haven't heard is when families talk about adding additional languages, that you need to, and it came up in one of the presentations earlier, that just because the 2 parents speak different languages, if they can't give about 30% of the day to a particular language, then you can't keep it going. So usually we recommend no more than 4 languages or balls in the air at a time. That would really get right at every minute of the day. So if one language takes on more time. Right. And then I had a woman the other day when I was doing a training for the State Department for raising bilingual children or multilingual children. And she just came up afterwards and said, I just want to tell you that my child was born with Fragile X syndrome. And because of their situation, they needed to have 3 languages, and were told not to do it under any circumstances. And the child didn't start speaking until about 3 or 3.5 years old, if I recall the story, but now is completely able to communicate in all 3 languages.
I have 2 more questions about, along the same lines that I had before. Are there any written literature, documentation of 2 different things, of the shift in parents after they've been educated about plurilingualism
in the sense of when they started school and their attitudes and their changing attitudes towards language acquisition after their child has been in schools and so on and so forth. And because it seems like it's really interesting to focus in how parents are receiving languages. And I know there are books put up by Multilingual Matters and other authors about like life with 2 languages that talk a lot about language, families that have 2 languages. Now we're in the year 2015, so I'm a little bit outdated as to whether or not there's literature out there in the home front, not so much at school, about language acquisition and structures like we were just talking about, acquiring 3, 4, or more languages. Do you know of any place that I could read up on studies that go beyond learning 2 languages at home, maybe 3? 3 is the norm in some countries, so maybe beyond 3, and how they go about it. They're 2 different questions.
There are 2 different books published by Multilingual Matters on trilingualism. One is by a Chinese author. I'm really sorry, I can't remember the name of either author, but they're both on the Multilingual Matters website. And as I say, one of them is by a Chinese author describing the process of bringing up her daughter in 3 different languages. There's another one, again, I'm pretty sure published by Multilingual Matters, but you can actually Google and get that. Yeah.
And also raising bilingual and multilingual children. There's some really nice books for parents that are easy to read. And again, sorry.
Last question.
I have one for Eugenia. Where is she? So when can we expect the next conference?
Fred, this kind is, what's the expression in Italian? Pane per i miei denti. Yes, there is an expression like that in Italian. I absolutely thrive. I feel, I don't know, that I've gained another 20 years in my life when I am in this type of environments and all that. I remember we went to Geneva, maybe Monique, you would remember that I didn't want to go back to school. I called my secretary at the time and I want to stay here forever. This conference needs to last forever. I want to create a little island where I can bring all these people and live on that island forever. It's so important, that kind of intellectual, what we would call it, interaction, that stimulating really. So I don't know how the 2 days passed, but I wanted to all, apart from thank you from the bottom of my heart for really being enthusiastically answering yes to this conference. I also wanted to just leave the last word to you before you leave us, to just take just one moment, in one sentence, leave us your reflection about what this conference meant for you, what kind of experience it was for you. So if I pass the mic and each one of you just say, just in one sentence, how was this conference for you? And I'm not really looking for compliments here. I want your genuine, heartfelt experience, okay? Because we can always improve and we can always learn. So I want you to be genuine.
Inspiring and hopeful for the future, and it was a pleasure to be with all of you. I think the level of engagement from everyone here was sensational. You were fantastic participants, and it was a joy to be with everyone. So thank you. Sorry, that was more than I said.
What I especially appreciated was actually to meet parents and teachers and speak to some of the children themselves. Because I go to conferences often, but it's not often that I actually meet some of the participants of my studies, or at least, their younger brothers and sisters, and talk to the parents, and to see that some of the work that we do has some meaning outside of journal articles and such. Thank you.
Well, I can say I'm very, very grateful for this conference because I met so many interesting people, and like my colleague says, the best thing was to meet the teachers and exchange the experience of being a teacher and also being a linguist and put the theory into practice. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sharing some of the same feeling. I think the level of engagement is been really inspiring. And as academics, very often we go to conferences, but not enough conferences that involve talking to people who actually have first-hand experience. I mean, we talk about research and results and data and statistics till the cows come home, but we don't actually talk to people and with people who, who matter in the sense that they're the ones that have the real first-time online experience of these things. So yes, thank
you. This was like being offered an amazingly delicious piece of chocolate while we were and looking at this wonderful thing.
Well, for me, I suppose it was a nice Tuscan red. I think what I would like to say, and these are Italian words that have been used politically in the past, se non ora quando. Let's go back and make it happen.
I had an experience that I'd never had at a conference before. I've interacted with colleagues, teachers. It's always enlightening and interesting. But I had a meeting with moms this afternoon. And the meeting was supposed to be for half an hour, but for an hour and a half we sat and we talked. And I was moved by their commitment and their interest in their children's language.
That was 3 hours. Refreshing, reinvigorating, reassuring, an emotional roller coaster on all fronts.
Informative, inspiring, engaging, and motivating to do more public engagement, more collaborations with several of you, and more research.
I think for me, to be here, which I knew it would be wonderful just because Jenny was part of it, her baby, but to hear a different way, this business of mother tongue, I just can't, I don't know where I've been all my life, but now I need to get into it and make more than a commitment, but to implement that in my school in the United States, and it's just been wonderful.
I think what's been most impressive for me is to see the capability of a single school and what they can make happen, not only on the ground, which you see in the school on a day-to-day basis, but the power of the school to make this event happen is truly impressive. I've been to many conferences, but I've never been to a conference of this caliber which has been organized by a single school. So that's truly impressive, and I thank you for including me in this.
For me, it has been really a joy, and I also have been at many conferences. The first motivation, of course, was to join my good friend Virginia in celebrating these 20 years of a big accomplishment with the school, and it's leading us to a lot of things. But personally, I think it's the opportunity to have this discussion in such a small group. I've been with both some of my colleagues in other conferences, but we never had the time to really chat and discuss and exchange ideas. So I think that was very important. And another thing is coming from the US is contrasting and learning about across our experiences. I've been always some sort of merged into the US reality, and coming out of that to learn about what is that other colleagues in other parts of the world are doing has been very enriching to me.
First of all, I wanted to say thank you to all of you. It was very inspirational. And for me, what it comes to my mind is work starts today for me. All over again.
It was an amazing experience. Thanks, Eugenia, for giving me the possibility to share with all these people what I live every day at your school. So, thank you.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank because for me it's really inspiring because I, had the opportunity to really hear from experts from all over the world that what we are doing at the Play English and the bilingual, what we are doing at the Play English and the bilingual school at Monza. I mean, it's a good thing, and then we are on the right way. So I think it was really inspiring, and it gives me the possibility and the chance to keep on going like that. That we are doing a very good job. Me, the teachers, and everybody, all the staff, especially the children, that they show really what they're learning every day and what we are and who we are. Thanks.
I find conferences like this incredibly invigorating, and I'm going to go back, as I did after the last conference I went to, feeling so inspired, having heard amazing speakers who are doing really valuable research and who are doing wonderful things, and it's been a great opportunity to reconnect with friends that you only see at occasions like this, and it is just invigorating, absolutely.
Am I the only one who thinks that Eugenia has not answered Fred's question? I didn't quite get it, but
it's called passing the buck.
Hopefully we won't have to wait another 20 years.
10 years.
Could have been a journalist, huh? I go back stimulated. I came here to share our experience, and I felt that I gained a lot more than I gave.
For me personally, I found it really valuable to take time out from teaching and running a department with 26 teachers, etc., to listen to research, to hear what's really going on, the facts. And I have time to reflect on it and take back to the teachers and to the parents to convince them that what we're doing is really, really valuable. Thank you.
I also work in a school, and day-to-day life is sometimes hectic. So it's very important to have this time to have a discussion with other teachers, with researchers, with parents, to really think about the things that matter, the things that we deal in our day-to-day life but don't really have time to reflect. So I would like to thank Eugenia from the bottom of my heart that you gave us the opportunity to come here and share our experience. Thank you.
I find it really hard not to cry, so I'm really dead. But we have two sets of speakers right there at the back. I know one set only arrived last night, so they didn't take part at yesterday's conference. And we have another set that the teachers in schools, in international schools, who gave. So I want to ask them whether they want to share. They have something to share with the rest of us. You have a loud voice, Karen. So what did you say? Thank you. Around the microphone.
No, I mean, I don't think I've got anything very original to add to what's been said. I think everything has been covered, but it's just so inspiring to see a school which is, really not a huge school, being behind such an amazing event and inspiring all of us. We come from long-established schools with really impressive resources, but you come up with something that has taught us all a great deal, and I think we're all going to go back
with renewed energy and commitment, and hopefully we'll take back the message to our heads of school and the rest of us along, so that we can catch up with what you're doing.
Could I, given that you've talked about the need for research in Italy to support the arguments that we're talking about, could I throw a challenge to you as researchers? If what you've seen from our school is a model that you like, please talk to Eugenia about using us as a case study site, about doing good research and qualitative and quantitative research within the school. Because if we are going to get good arguments about language acquisition and bilingualism and multilingualism as an argument within a very monolingual country, then we need to work hard and get the data